Welcome to another episode of The Conviction Fiction, where we change the narrative of life after lockup and spotlight the real stories too often left in the shadow. I'm your host, Antoine Rivers, and today's episode is deeply personal, not just for me, but for millions of children across the country. Imagine being 6 years old and watching your parent walk out the door, not for work, not for a trip, but in handcuffs. For more than 5 million children in the United States, this isn't a nightmare or a scene from a movie, it's their reality. Today, we're diving into the long term effects of parental incarceration and how we, as a community, can do better in supporting these silent victims. Let's go ahead and get into it. Let's talk numbers and reality. According to the Prison Policy Initiative, nearly 2 million people are currently incarcerated across the United States, and that includes federal prisons, state facilities, county jails, immigration detention centers, and more. Want to make sure that those numbers are including those individuals that are incarcerated in different countries. Want to check that. Can we check that later on? All right, cool. But those numbers don't just represent individuals, they represent families, especially children. The Sentencing Project reports that around 2.7 million children have a parent who is currently incarcerated. And when you include children who've ever had a parent locked up at any point, that number rises over to 5 million. I'm a part of that number because I was locked up and my children had to deal with me on the other side of the wall. Now, here's what hits even harder. Children are most commonly separated from a parent during critical developmental years, and that includes the ages between birth and 10 years old. These are the years when children start to build their identity, their sense of safety, and their understanding of the world. And when a parent vanishes from their life, not by choice, but by through handcuffs. So guess it could be by choice because there were some terrible decisions being made, right? Let's just be honest. If there were terrible decisions being made, it was sort of a choice. But you go to courtrooms and all this other stuff, and it can cause deep emotional confusion and fear for the child. The effects start immediately. The remaining parent, more often than not, the mother. I'm just saying, the mother is suddenly left to carry the entire load, financially, emotionally, and logistically. Overnight, a what we would hope was a two-parent household, most times it's not. But overnight, a two-parent household can become a one-parent survival mission if it wasn't already a survival mission. And in many cases, the family was already living on the edge. So this incarceration pushes them off the cliff. Just for the sake of argument, let's say the remaining parent can't afford childcare or loses work trying to manage it all. Then the child might bounce between relatives, grandma today, auntie next week, maybe foster care if the system steps in. And that's a stark reality. It can happen because there are instances when both parents are incarcerated. And that's when things get even more fragile. Children are often placed into the foster care system where the outcomes can vary dramatically. Some find safety and support, maybe in gangs, but others face neglect, instability, or even abuse. And for siblings, separation is common, which compounds the trauma. And here's the hardest truth. Once a child is placed into foster care, the incarcerated parent risks losing their parental rights altogether. Altogether, just lose all of your parental rights, especially if their sentence is lengthy and they can't maintain consistent contact. So what does this all mean? That's what this show is about. We trying to figure out what it all means, because to me, the justice system, our justice system, doesn't just punish individuals; it punishes families. It punishes kids that had no part in the crime but suffered the sentence all the same. Now, what I'm not saying is that people should get away with crime. You will never hear me say crime is the thing to do. But in these instances where children are separated from their parents, I think that the justice system should have some type of program or some type of reform movement wherein, even though they are locked up, they should still have some communications or programs where they can still deal with their kids. But these are those quiet stories that people they don't make big headlines about. They want to talk about, all the crazy stuff that's going on in prison, which we know it's some crazy stuff going on in prisons. Um, these don't make the headlines. These don't make the reels. This don't make like the Facebook or the YouTubes. Um, but they're real and they're unfolding in our communities every day. Let's look at what happens to these kids beyond the numbers. We've seen the numbers, 5 million kids affected, but children of incarcerated parents are at a higher risk for emotional and psychological trauma. This is that repetitive cycle that we often talk about in certain communities. They often battle depression, anxiety, and feelings of abandonment. Behavioral challenges that they have are they're more likely to show aggression or withdrawal at school or at home. There may be educational difficulties like suspensions, lower reading scores, and grade retentions. All that stuff goes out of the door because they are dealing with an incarcerated parent, right? I don't have to look too far to understand how real this is, because I remember when I was inside and I had two daughters. They were, when I first got locked up, they were 1 and 2, and then my son, he was, uh, what, 1, 2, their steps, 3, 2, 1, basically all the way down 3, 2, 1. Um, and I can remember when they were about 5 and 6 years old at the time, they came to visit me doing one of those Fatherhood Initiative workshops. I'm going to shout them out throughout this program because they do really work in order to make sure kids have a way to stay in touch with their incarcerated parent. But they would come visit me during the Fatherhood Initiative workshops, and these workshops were meant to keep us connected, to let us play games, read books, and share time in a space that for only a few hours, it didn't feel like prison. But the hardest part was always the end, because when the 3 hour visit was up and the room was silent again, my girls didn't understand why they had to leave. They didn't understand why I couldn't come with them. And honestly, in that moment, I didn't either. That memory still hits deep because at the end of the day, I was like, why am I even trying? Because it seems like it's hurting them just to be in a visitation room with them, to be in this Fatherhood Initiative program that allows me to play with them and all this stuff. And then we're reconnecting and then we're separated. But that's all because the system didn't just lock me up. It put emotional handcuffs on my kids too. And I'm never going to shy away from the decisions that I made. But children with incarcerated parents don't just lose a parent to a prison number. They lose time, safety, connection, and sometimes even themselves. So it's very important for you guys to take it into consideration when you're doing crimes and doing all that stuff. It's more so about, prison reform, but at the same time, a mental and change of thinking for you, because you're affecting more than just yourself. Okay. Now, let me take you back to a conversation from one of our early episodes, a bonus episode. It was called A Father's Absence. It was growing up with a parent behind bars. And if you haven't heard it yet, go check it out wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, because it is very powerful. because in that episode I sat down with Nolan. He's a 21-year-old guy who shared what it was like growing up with his father in and out of prison. Now, for the most part, his mom raised him. He was strong, steady, doing everything she could, but the absence of his dad left a space that no amount of love could fill. He actually opened up about how hard it was trying to play sports. I mean, we talk about, you know, want to get our kids in the game to teach them discipline, to teach them team building, to teach them camaraderie. And he was playing baseball and track, and it was different because he did not have his father in the stands, and his father was, of course, locked up. And he told me he'd see the other kids with their dad showing up to practice, cheering them from the bleachers, you know, making sure he had his cleats tied up, just being there. And every time he looked around, he didn't see his, and he started caring a little less. He started caring a little less about baseball and track. So eventually, he shared that eventually he lost the love of the game, and not because he wasn't talented. He was extremely fast. He can get people out. He could hit home runs. It wasn't because he wasn't talented. It wasn't because he didn't like playing the sport, but because the pain of what he didn't have, that connection, that encouragement and presence became heavier than the joy. Right. And I'm gonna stop right there because I see a lot of the comments that come in for the Conviction Fiction podcast. I would never come on this podcast and say that, okay, you committed a crime and now you want, oh, woe is me, like take care of me. It's more so of an invitation for those people that are out there to not commit crime. Don't remove yourself from a life. Don't remove yourself from your children. Right? We got to be more mentally prepared and more um, socially developed in order to prevent this kind of stuff. But if you have, that's what this show is about. If you have been through incarceration, if you have lost your children, if you have dealt with mental illness, if you have like become socially undeveloped because of your time in prison, then this show is for you to help you recoup and think about some of the people that you affected, including yourself. Your father, or in this case, Nolan's father, he got home. Nolan's father came home and they were working on rebuilding their relationship. But Nolan told me that, he had learned how to live without needing him. And he don't know how to let him in. And that's the long shadow of incarceration. So first of all, don't do it. Especially if you've been out. Don't go back. Reentry isn't just about getting out. It's about reconnecting. Sometimes with people who feel like strangers, even though they share your name and your blood. Now, Nolan's story is just one of many. And it's a reminder that incarceration doesn't just pause a parent-child relationship. It actually rewrites that relationship. And one thing I don't do on this show is, I don't want you to become overwhelmed because these are heavy topics. And it's easy to get overwhelmed by the trauma. But I want to take a few minutes to highlight what's being done and what's working to support these children and families, right? And most of that work is going to take you. If you are formerly incarcerated or a returning citizen, it's going to take you to rewrite the narrative. There are some programs and initiatives out there. Let's start with Angel Tree. Now, this program of prison fellowship will deliver personalized Christmas gifts to children on behalf of their incarcerated parents. I used this when I was in because basically we would fill out a form. We would put down our child's age and what they like to do. Then local volunteers or churches would adopt these requests, buying and delivering those gifts that, would suit the child's needs and age appropriate. And then it will have a message from the mom or dad that sent it. Okay. Now, what might seem like a small gesture, a toy, a doll, a pair of sneakers, is actually a lifeline. It tells the child that I haven't forgotten you. I still care and I still love you. And I did that consecutively for the years that I was away. Now, that message can carry a kid through some of their hardest days. They might cling onto that toy and that doll or that action figure or that football and say, well, my dad got me this, right? Or my mom bought me this, and I'm going to hold it dear to my heart. Now, another program close to my heart is the Fatherhood Initiative. I talked about that early in the podcast. I was a part of it when I was incarcerated because every 3 to 6 months, the facility would host father-child play dates where we would spend hours with our kids in a space that felt more like something like a school gym or a community center than a prison. We had board games, snacks, coloring books, story time. We weren't just inmates anymore. We were dads again. Now I'll never forget how my daughters lit up during those visits, even it was just a few hours. I got to hold them, listen to them, remind them that they still had a dad, and remind them they had a father. Right, a dad. We talk about dads being anybody can be a dad. You can just impregnate a woman, or and then but a father during these times at those fatherhood initiative events, it reminded me that I still had a purpose beyond my sentence. Now, these programs are trying to do what incarceration often tears apart. Incarceration can tear apart the bond between a parent and child, and we have to preserve that. It is very fragile. The truth is, when we invest in those relationships, when we fight to keep love alive through the walls and the wire, we're protecting two generations at once. We're saying you still matter. We're saying that you still have a future together. If you know any programs, drop them in the comments so we can give them their flowers today, because it's vitally important that we continue to highlight those programs or bring more programs into those facilities that don't have them, because it's very important for the reentry process. Now, the bigger picture is the system, the gaps, and all those things that need to change. But let me say this first loud and clear, because we're just not talking about fathers. We cannot forget the mothers. Incarcerated mothers face unique and often harsher consequences when it comes to their children. Over 70% of incarcerated women are the primary caregivers of their children when they are arrested. So you're talking about over 70% of the mothers that are locked up. They were the primary caretakers for their children. And unlike men, many of these women were single parents already, meaning their incarceration often sends their kids directly into the foster care system or into the hands of the grandma, the auntie, who may not be emotionally or financially prepared to take on a new kid. Now, we covered this deeply in an earlier episode with April Park. She's the founder of AP Rose Entertainment. Shout out to April, doing big things, the Queenables, the Kingables, all streaming live for you on YouTube and all those channels. Be sure to check out AP Rose Entertainment. Now, if you haven't heard it yet, the interview that I had with April, it happened, I want to say a couple of weeks ago. Go check it out. It's real, raw, and necessary. You can find it on YouTube, Google Podcasts, Apple Music. It's there. And in it, April shared how after serving her time, she had to fight to get her children back, not from the state, but from her own family. And even after her release, her worth as a mother was questioned. She had to prove herself all over again, go to court, find stable housing, maintain employment, pass multiple hurdles just to get trust back from the very kids she gave birth to. And April's story is not uncommon, especially when it comes to mothers. The truth is, women who go to prison, the system doesn't just take their freedom, it attacks their identity as mothers. And reuniting families becomes a legal and emotional battle that lasts long after the prison gates open. So, what needs to change? What do we need to change about that? For the most part, more support for reentry, parenting classes, therapy, transitional housing, legal assistance, not just for the individual, but for the family, for the entire family unit, the fathers, the mothers, all who are incarcerated, they need better assistance when it comes to reintegrating in society. There could also be those alternative to incarceration for those nonviolent offenses, especially when children are involved. Stronger visitation rights and increased funding for programs like the Fatherhood Initiative and its female equivalents, so parents can maintain a relationship with their kids even while serving time. All of that can help change the narrative, guys. Okay? Now, it can be easy to get overwhelmed by the trauma, but I want to take a few minutes to highlight what's been done and what's working to support these families again, like Angel Tree, National Fatherhood Initiative, and any of those programs that you have. Please put them in the comments so I can make sure that they are giving their proper flowers. Now, we need a system that values family restoration, not just punishment, because at the end of the day, the goal isn't just to release someone, it's to restore them or put them in a place where they can actually contribute and not be a bane. We don't want to overwhelm them where they like, ooh, this is just too much to handle, right? This is too much to handle. If today's episode spoke to you, if you've lived it, witnessed it, or felt the ripple effects, then don't let the conversation stop here. Let's keep showing up for the children of incarcerated parents. Support the programs like Angel Tree, volunteer reentry organizations like Dream Builders Foundations or Focus 21 Foundation. One more question .org. They had an event yesterday for helping people get a second chance at getting a job. All right. I was able to attend. Shout out to Dr. Travis Barber, Dr. Terrence Berry with um, um, Dr. Terrence Berry with Focus 21. I got so many organizations in my head. Ebony Rostover with Dream Builders Foundation up in the greater New York area. And no, greater Pennsylvania area. I want to change that. Ebony Rostover up in with the Dream Builders Foundation in the greater Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area. Also, Jessica and Barry Jones represent New York with breakingthechange.org. Also, some of the local ones here in Atlanta want to give out Teens on Point with Philip Cooper. They help support and get kids trades, right? That may be something that you want to do if your kid is out here in the streets or something like that because you are incarcerated, right? You might want to get them signed up with Teens on Point with Philip Cooper where they can at least have a trade. You put them through school, that could be something that you can use as leverage when you are returning. Now, um, donate school supplies to kids impacted by incarceration, or simply offer your time if you're out here, and you can give the attention to a family in need. You never know how much it means. And for those of you who have um, walked this road as a parent, a child, or loved one, know this: you are not alone, and your story does matter. But before we go, I have a quick announcement. I'm currently working on a brand new book. It's raw, real, and focuses on life after prison, rebuilding family, and redefining purpose, including topics like what we're talking about now, um, being able to take care of your child when you weren't taking care of your child. So be on the lookout. I'll be sharing updates soon. And if you haven't picked up my first book yet, go over to Amazon. The Conviction Fiction, Changing the Narrative of Life After Lockup. It's there. You can grab your copy. It's part memoir, it's part manual, but it is 100% from the heart. Until next time, guys, I want you to keep pushing, keep healing, and keep believing in the power of transformation. This is Antoine Rivers, and this is the Conviction Fiction, where we don't just change the narrative, we tell the truth. We change lives. Thanks for joining. See you next week.